Hello there. Today I wanted to talk about burning the boats. You may have heard this phrase if you're an entrepreneur in particular. The whole thing where you should just quit your job, take out your 401k, take all of your savings, and blow all of your credit cards on this one thing, right? Burn your boats. And it's a very, you know, inspirational, idealistic sentiment. But is it practical? I recently heard someone talking about their personal story, which involved burning their boats. And they spent, this is exactly what they did. They took out their 401k money. They spent $90,000 doing what a big guru said to do. You probably know who this is, but I'm not going to say his name. And he was trying to do the whole fake it before you make it. So before he knew what he was doing, before he had a clue of how to go about doing any of it, he just was like, okay, I'm all in, I'm doing this. And he spent a bunch of money. He left, he moved to a different state, and he quit his job, everything. And then he proceeds to talk about his success story. What do you think happened? He was destitute for like a year. He was sleeping on his friend's couch. He was, picking up odd jobs here and there, barely scraping by. And okay, after a while, eventually he finally started to make it. But using burn the boats as a strategy isn't necessary. Because why put yourself into that position? Why put yourself at risk? Why become homeless all for the sake of chasing success? It doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't. In fact, I venture to argue that burn the boats is something that high ticket offer people say as an excuse for you to just go all in, right? Because then they're setting it up for they're seeding the whole conversation for you to say yes to their high ticket program even if you can't afford it. That's really what it boils down to, honestly. But let's dissect this a little bit. The first thing is going all in, as far as no matter what it takes, I'm going to do this. Make that decision and then get rid of the chance of going back and pivoting to a different direction. Like, let's say you have 5 possibilities and you make a decision, meaning you dissect all of the others except for that one. So that's what they want you to do, is just say, okay, I'm all in on this one direction, right? It sounds good. It sounds idealistic. It sounds positive. It sounds motivating, right? But if you're going down this path and nothing is working out, who's to say that you can't go back and change your mind and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to try option 2. I'm going to I'm going to pick what's behind door number 2 instead of the one I already picked. So, let's see what's behind door number 2, Bob. You don't have to burn your bridges or burn the boats. And the story goes, Cortez, when he reached the coastline of South America, and they were going to attack the Aztec village, and and Cortés didn't want his team to bail on him and turn tail and jump on the ships and run away. So he burned the boats. And it was a victory for him. So then they always use this as the example, the golden child of the burn your boats example, right? So did that work for him? Yes. Does it always work for people who burn their boats? No. It does not always get you to a better place than you would have ordinarily. So that's one aspect of it. So you want to have a contingency plan. You don't have to be all in. In fact, it's better if you're not all in. So you don't have to go all in. In fact, it's better that you don't. Have you ever seen a wheel of life diagram? And it's kind of like a pie chart, and each section of the pie is a different aspect of your life. So you have your health, your wealth, your relationships, your happiness, your whatever, right? It's just the idea of having this roundness to your life. Like, you have to take care of all of the aspects of your life, not just one. So the problem with, or one of the potential problems that I see with the burn your boats strategy is that you're neglecting all of those other things. So you're just like tunnel vision, you're putting on your blinders, which could be a useful tactic, especially for somebody who kind of gets shiny object syndrome and goes over here and then gets pulled over here and gets pulled over here, right? So the whole point of the idea behind burn your boats is that you only focusing 100% on this one thing. And I hear that there are a lot of people who are gurus, and they have followers, and this is their whole message, is that you need to just be doing one thing. In marketing, you have marketing strategy, one audience, and one location, one method, right? Like, you just want to focus on doing that one thing. Well, first of all, I run virtual events, and I get people from everywhere. I want to cast a big net. If I were to focus 100% on just, say, Facebook groups, that's not going to get me that far. So that's why I do Facebook groups, LinkedIn event pages, Facebook event pages, Eventbrite, Alignable, Meetup, email, ads, Google ads, Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads. Social media posts everywhere across the board. Websites, networking events, lead magnets, upsells from lead magnets, like all sorts of different places, right? So the more of these different directions you can go in, the wider you can cast your net. So in marketing, I suppose the people that are all about the 1-1-1 strategy, they probably have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on ads, I'm going to guess. In fact, a lot of these gurus are, 2 Club awardees, like the ClickFunnels award. And a huge part of that strategy is ads. And it's funny because I recently kind of got into this ecosystem of this social media coach who's all about make your social media posts look glamorous and make everybody envy you so that they'll just reach out to you. And when you say, yes, my program is $10,000, they just say, yes, I'm signing up from one social media post. That's her whole shtick. But guess where I first saw her? It was a Facebook ad. So when you see these people saying you should only do it this way, there's another example of somebody who does evergreen webinars, and they say, oh, your email is dead. Email marketing is dead. Don't worry about making an email list. Just do this one thing. Well, guess what? I went to her one of her events because I got an email from her. So focus on what types of strategies are these people using to get you into their ecosystem, and is that contrary to the marketing advice that they're giving you? So what I like to do, and my business partner Alice, is we like to come up with contingency plans. In other words, instead of going full speed ahead, ramming speed, and using yourself as the, the battering ram, there is an easier way, which is try something, and if it doesn't work, don't just keep beating your head against the wall. Don't just keep trying to do the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Tweak it, adjust it, go around the rock that you're beating your head against instead of trying to go through it, right? So instead of only having one plan of action, have it be flexible, have it be versatile, have it be, kind of go with the flow. Because I have noticed that when my life is in flow, everything feels easy and effortless and time just flies by. When you're going against the grain, you're beating your head against the wall. And for some people, they say that you should keep on doing that because that is how you're going to succeed. But succeed at what? What is your benchmark for success, first of all? Be miserable for 20 years and then finally get to where you wanted to be, and only to see that you're not really happy there because you were thinking that point, that pinpoint where you call success, the goalpost that says success, it's an illusion. Most of the time people get there and they're just like, okay, now what? Now this didn't bring me joy and happiness and fulfillment in my life. So focus on your process. I mean, yeah, you should keep your destination in mind, and you should have a goal, and you should set smarter goals so you have like an end point and a clearly defined, all of these statistics, whatever the amount by X date and stuff like that. But what is the process of getting there? I've abandoned programs where the the grind was rigorous and heart-wrenching and backbreaking and mentally breaking, and it's just like the goal isn't even worth this. So what are you giving up right now? Why not make happiness now, in the moment, in the present experience of getting there, part of that journey? What are you giving up along the way? What are the boats that you're burning? Why is it necessary to burn those boats? Instead of just following somebody blindly, why don't you question some of these things? Figure out, is this true for me? I think another thing that a lot of people go through is they'll get into a high ticket coaching program where the coach is basically, it's my way, the highway. So you got to listen to me 100%. And you need to be 100% devoted to this thing all day, every day. Everything in your life, you just push it aside because it's not important as this right here, right now, that you have committed to. And because you said you committed to it, you now have to follow through on your commitment to be in integrity and blah, 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 blah. okay with being in integrity, but I've also seen this used against people in a very inappropriate way, in a very unprofessional way. So I don't buy into it. The whole thing of, oh, you should just listen to me because I'm your coach, and you know, you should just turn off all the questions in your head, turn off all of the internal dialogue, turn off uh any sort of reasoning and logic and your own personal objections coming up and all this, right? And just listen to do what I tell you to do. Then you're an indentured servant, first of all. You've handed over your freedom is basically what you've done. And also, I don't believe that there is a one way to do things. And it irks me when somebody comes along and they're an expert in their field, and it seems to me like all that being an expert has done for them is given them carte blanche to just say, my way or the highway. This is the only way to do it. If you're doing it a different way, you're screwing it up. I believe that there are thousands or tens of thousands or millions of ways to do things. And I have happened to stumble upon some strategies that have worked for me, and I would like to impart that knowledge onto other people, but I don't think that my way was the only way to do it. It's one of several, but it happens to have worked. It's a proven strategy. A proven strategy doesn't mean you have to do it this way 100% or you're messing up. So, I have learned to watch out for that type of language in experts, gurus, coaches, whatever you want to call them, who are trying to get me sucked into their program. Be wary when somebody says that you need to burn the boats, because I don't believe that that's true or helpful. In fact, one of the psychological things that burning the boats does is it gets you to take action, because once you have stepped off that ledge, you need to take action. You could stand on the edge and kind of hum and haw and just kind of, I don't know. You can teeter there for a long, long, long time, right? An indecision of, should I, shouldn't I, should I, right? But then once you take that step, it's like, ooh, there's no going back now, right? So the underlying reason why this works is because it's getting you to take action. It's getting you to make that decision. And it's kind of like, if you're an all or nothing, it's just like, okay, done deal. I've already said yes, I've committed, now I have to do it, right? So it's motivating you. But there are other ways that you can motivate yourself to do that without having to risk it all and become homeless. And did that guy eventually become successful? Yes. It was because he had to, because he was 100K in debt. And he floundered and struggled to get back out of the out of the negative, right? Before he can actually start growing upward from zero. I guess the other part is, when you're learning from other people, when you're taking on their strategies as your own, you're using their templates, their structures, their formulas, whatnot. It's because you get to avoid that trap, the literal pitfall of going through that yourself. So you're paying for other people's experience, you're paying to learn from other people's mistakes, and you're collapsing time because they're giving you that shortcut of, I was here, I went through all this crap before I got over here, but now I know how to get over here, so I'm just going to like throw you a line so you can just go across without having to go through all that crap that I did. Well, some of them do. I think some of them are like, yeah, no, you're going to go in that crap just so you can experience the whole thing just like I did. And then they just throw you into the crap. So they're not 100% right. Heck, I'm not 100% right. I'm sure for some people, burning their boats, that was the best move they could have made. But just like every single statistic, they're a statistic. It's a percentage of the people. Not 100% of the people that burn their boats are successful. It's not like burn your boats equals success. No, there's like a bunch of interim steps between those two things. They aren't equal. One does not become the other thing automatically. It's okay to make sound, wise, financially responsible, logical decisions that propel your business forward. And maybe doing it that way doesn't make you take off like a rocket. It's more like a steady, slow and steady incline. Then again, maybe you could just take off like a rocket. Who knows? I'm sure there's a variable here in anything that I'm saying. But I think the misconception and the expectation that burning your boats will make you skyrocket and become the next Oprah is a fallacy, and it needs to be exposed, because people's livelihoods are at stake, their families are at stake. The people that are giving up everything just so they can go all in, right? That's not always the best solution. Sometimes you have to take a step back, take a pause, reassess, look around you. What's not working? What is working? Do more of what's working, do less of what's not working. Pivot, move forward, make another decision. Maybe go backwards a few steps because, oh, I just walked into a lion's den. I just walked into a bear cave. Maybe I should just back up and exit out of here instead of trying to go into the cave even further. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. It's self-preservation. It's common sense. It's perfectly fine. What they're trying to get you to do is get out of your safety net, because feeling safe and feeling comfortable is that thing that will keep you where you are and keep you from changing and progressing. But if you're cognizant of this and you're aware of that, you can do different things to be more self-motivated and to be willing to step out of your comfort zone. By the way, I don't like to call it step out of your comfort zone. I like to call it expand your comfort zone. I've just used that terminology just so you can understand what I'm saying. But you ultimately, you are expanding your comfort zone, because once you do something that's uncomfortable several times, then you get used to it and it's no longer uncomfortable. So now you've added that to your repertoire of things that you can do comfortably. So just consider that, and consider that you can be successful with carefully placed incremental steps towards progress. Just consistency, in my opinion, feels more useful than burning the boats, going all in, jumping off the cliff. It's a little bit rash. Maybe it's ideal for, you know, men in their 20s or something that are just like, you know, unattached, untethered, that are just like, okay, I'm doing this, right? I'm no longer going to be, you know, flipping burgers. I'm just going to go do this thing, right? There are certain times in your life where that is a reasonable plan. Oh, speaking of plan, That's the other part. This guy that burned his boats, he didn't have a plan. So why on God's great earth would you jump into something before you have a plan? I think a lot of these people are backwards in this strategy because instead of not knowing what you're doing, fumbling, just lost, confused, and saying, okay, I'm just going to trust the coach. Yeah, okay. So I'm sure some people would be successful from that. But instead of doing that, what you could also do is get your bearings, go slower, be methodical, be intentional, learn more, figure things out, use critical thinking, and say, okay, now I know what I'm doing because you've created the plan first and then started taking action. Instead of acting first, just just make sure that you know your destination. If you are looking at a map, it can be completely useless if you don't know where you are. That's why when you see like maps in mall kiosks and stuff, they'll say you are here. Because once you see where you are, then you can easily figure out where you want to go. But if you don't know where you are on the map, it's like Alice in Wonderland. What direction should I go in? Well, it depends. Where are you trying to go? And if you don't know, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which direction you go in if you don't know where you're going. So if you want to figure out what that end goal is and then make progress towards that instead of blundering along. I mean, okay, let me take a step back again. For some people, that's all they want. They just want to cruise through life. They just want to, take a summer job so they can get just enough money to go on a trip so they can quit that job and then they're like unattached, free spirit, just traveling and then they use up all the money and then they're like, okay, well, maybe I should just settle down and then I'll get a job and then they'll sit there and work and earn some more money and then they'll be like, okay, well, I have a little nest egg here. Let me just blow all that on the next 6 months and they kind of just wind along like that and they're easy go lucky. They're like, okay, whatever, I'll just go with the flow. Hey, if you enjoy that lifestyle, more power to you. Do it by all means, go for it. But if you have that drive, which apparently I do for some reason, if you have that drive to get to a certain destination, then instead of following somebody blindly and throwing all your money at them and taking out your life savings, just start figuring things out for yourself one thing at a time. And just focus on taking that next step. And then once you figured out how to get to that next step, focus on taking the next step. It doesn't have to be a grand adventure. You don't have to climb to the top of Mount Everest, believe it or not. In fact, I strongly discourage that because that's like a death trap, but that's a different story. So you don't have to make it to the top of Mount Everest. You can just prance through a quaint little trail through the woods. But make sure you know where you're going, create a plan, and start working that plan. And figuring out what's your next step. What's your next step? What's your next step? And it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing where you chuck hundreds of thousands of dollars into this and just make it work no matter what. Because, yeah, did that guy make it work? Yeah. He was kind of forced to because once he was in the crap, he had to wade through the crap to get back out of it again. But you don't have to jump into the crap in the first place. In fact, even if you promise somebody that you would go jump into the crap, you can still say, you know what? I'm sorry, but I changed my mind. Give yourself permission to change your mind. If you start going to, let's say, a hypothetical situation here, let's say you start going to veterinarian school because you want to become a veterinarian, and then something happens and you're like, wow, I really don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I changed my mind. This sounded like a really cool job before I started doing this, but now that I'm here and doing this, I'm like, wow, I really don't want to be doing this. Well, you might have to give up your tuition that you paid for the veteran school. You might have to like cut your losses and say all the money that I invested in doing this, it's kind of pointless now. So that's a decision you could make to go, wow, I really don't like doing this, even though I told my grandmother I was going to become a veterinarian when I grew up, or whatever promise you made to whatever person. you you give yourself grace. Once we become disillusioned about things, we might have a completely different concept of what success is. And that's okay. It's okay to say something different than what you said you were going to do 10 years ago, or 2 years ago, 1 year ago, last week. It's it's one of these psychological triggers that a lot of people use against people to try to get them to commit no matter what. But commitment is not necessary. I think that it requires something different. It requires that drive, and it requires why. Why are you doing this? What is your ultimate goal? Is it because you because you feel like this is your life's purpose? Then yeah. If that's your life's purpose and you're completely miserable right now, maybe you should go ahead and quit that job and go pursue that. Or you could also keep working that job and turn it into your side hustle for a while, and then use your job to fund that uh, passion project. And then once that becomes more successful, or you see the fruits of your efforts, then you can make the decision to quit that job. But it doesn't have to be either or. You don't have to go all in. You don't have to burn your boats. So I hope this has helped in some way. And thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.